where strategy gaming meets good vibes. No stress, just critical moves. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Critical Moves podcast. Today, me and my best pal Tim will be discussing why AAA studios abandoned RTS games and consider will they ever return. Happy Valentine's Day, Tim.
Hey everyone, thank you. You too. How's it going?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Been playing many games other than Beyond All Reason recently.
Are there other games than Beyond All Reason?
Yeah. Apparently there's a lesser known title called Civilization 7 has released this week. Have you tried it?
Yeah. I'm not there. I saw the reviews. I will try it at some point. I think they have a lot of work to do, to be honest.
The reviews are terrible, aren't they?
It's early access.
When I looked, but it shouldn't be early access.
Well, it's not officially early access, but
no. One review I saw on Steam said it was an alpha release, which I thought was quite critical. I think it's shown as mixed on Steam at the moment, which is not good when you're launching a flagship title like that. But anyway, let's put Civ 7 to the side. I think that Joe desperately wants to come and talk to us about Civ 7 on a future episode. I thought you and I, as the two Critical Moves super fans for real-time strategy games, could have a conversation about what the state is of RTS games at the moment. I think the last AAA title was maybe Homeworld 3. I can't think of anything other than that.
One of the latest one is also Stormgate, I would say, I guess. That was a big one for me. AAA that was really trying to come out with something.
Would you say that Stormgate was AAA? It's a free-to-play game, isn't it?
So, I think it's made by the people from Blizzard, like a lot of developers who have like a huge amount of experience. And yeah, it got funding, like I think it's something like 30 million or maybe even more than 30 million in funding. So yeah, I mean, that's AAA. That's not some indie developer.
Was that on Kickstarter? Was that the funding?
Yeah, so it went through several funding rounds, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I suppose you could argue if you're going to crowdsourcing your money to make a game, you're not a AAA studio.
I think not all of that was crowdfunding. There was some seed funding as well, actually. But and it's not even fully released yet. It's early access, so it's all debatable. Yeah. But I mean, it's out there, I think, and it has a lot of the movements behind latest RTS games being released. I think Homeworld is another one. Yeah, Homeworld is quite special, I guess. But yeah, that didn't go well.
Yeah, I think that Homeworld has such a legacy. It was so, I think the first game was such a hugely impactful game on RTS, with it moving out into space and being completely different to terrestrial-based games. But Homeworld 3 bombed, really.
It did, and quite a few other RTS bombed as well. I mean, even Stormgate is not doing that well, I don't think. But yeah, Age of Empires 4 is another one I can think of that was released not too long ago, and that's not doing well at all.
That was that 2021, Age of Empires 4?
Okay, you will not catch me on the exact date of the release, but I mean, I would say like one of the latest big.
It's been a few years, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it's one of the big RTS releases, and it says that it's quite a while ago, and it didn't do well. And Age of Empires 2 is doing much better than Age of Empires 4, so I think that should tell us a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I suppose Relic, they're the developer for Age of Empires 4, and I guess they are one of the big names, one of the only remaining big names in RTS games. You know, when you put Westwood to the side and gas-powered games to the side, you're only left with Relic, and they are not doing particularly well, are they? Really, you know, and I guess the Age of Empires 4 not being hugely successful wouldn't have helped their future prospects.
And to me, what it is, a lot of it is people have moved on to different genres. I think RTS, I love it. I love to play it. But I think there's a lot of other genres that took over the RTS folks. And I think it split up in two big directions. One is the ones that wanted a bit more action-packed and they went to MOBA. And the others that wanted perhaps a bit more depth and a bit more strategy, and they went to grand strategy.
Yeah, and then the people who don't play strategy games at all because it requires too much grey matter to do so, and they stick with their FPS games and their Grand Theft Autos and things like that.
Yeah, but
it's quite interesting.
They never have played RTS, so I mean, I'm trying to see what changed for people to not buy as much into RTS as before, I guess.
So what did change? That's the burning question, isn't it, really? What did change?
Well, game development changed. Like, people learned to develop new kinds of games, more complex games, like the grand strategy games. And then, MOBA came out of RTS. Let's remember that, right? It was a RTS map at first before it became its own game. People learned to make, I guess, more fun games. That being said, there's definitely still interest in RTS. There's definitely still tons of players and people making RTS games. It's just not as... It's not the biggest strategy subgenre as it used to be.
Yeah, it's strange for me thinking of RTS games as niche, because I hark back, decades of playing games. I go back to 1995, when they were hugely mainstream. They were the pinnacle, really, because they were comparatively complex when you compared them to other games released around that time. But is it just a case of they haven't been able to evolve? They haven't been able to adapt to the new technologies and the new abilities, and it's kind of stale. And is one RTS the same as another RTS?
So what is really bizarre to me is a lot of the newer developments that have been made in RTS games, such as the infinite zooming in and out with the scrolling and Supreme Commander and then Beyond All Reason. Those are things that have not been taken by every new developer, and that's really bizarre to me. Like, some of these new releases, they take still all of the mechanics of like 10, 15 years ago and haven't evolved with it at all. Something like Age of Empires 4, it could have been released 10 years earlier and you wouldn't even be able to tell, other than perhaps the graphics or something like that. But in terms of controls, in terms of like innovative gameplay design, it's quite stale.
Yeah, I think that strategic zoom, which I think Supreme Commander brought that out, and it kind of was revolutionary at the time. There was no other game that did that. The ability to go from a godlike view of the entire theatre of war right down to see the interactions between the units. That really should be industry standard.
It should.
If it could have been done, if it can be done in 2007, it can be done in 2025. So you're right. Why are people not having that in all of the games? But is it a case of they're trying to be more visceral? They're trying to be more intimate. So if you're playing something like the Terminator game, is it Defiance? It's not Dark Fate, because that's the name of the movie. Do you know the game that I mean?
No.
It'll come to me. But there's the Terminator RTS. There's the Starship Troopers one that Nuna was saying was so incredibly technical, because the units would kneel down and you could shoot over their heads. I guess with those kind of games, they're probably trying to be quite action heavy, and therefore you want your gamer, you want your audience to be in the thick of it. And perhaps the decision to not include something like strategic zoom is because you want that visceral experience.
So I think that if RTS developers really want to capture an audience, and I talk to people who enjoy RTS, whether it's casually or a little bit more profoundly, something that I hear a lot, and some of the big successes with games like Age of Empires 2, for example, is like this feeling of like building up your town, and you feel quite involved with it, and then you get to build something kind of nice and neat, and so what I would want to see from RTS games is to merge a little bit with other subgenres, like take in some of the like simulation gameplay and add that to your RTS game. Stuff like this, like something Stronghold has done, for example. It took the regular Age of Empires game and added some like castle simulation to it, and that was really popular. And I think there's still loads of venues to go with that, and still unexplored directions to go in.
It was Terminator Dark Fate Defiance.
Right.
That was the name of the game. And you're right, maybe we need to see a further evolution in these games to include, as you say, castle building, to include maybe some roguelike elements. Perhaps the age of the traditional RTS is over, and they need to start including other more esoteric mechanics in order to remain relevant. Because I guess maybe the reason why RTS games aren't as popular, maybe the reason they have been abandoned by AAA studios is because it's just the same thing.
It is.
Playing one RTS is the same as playing another RTS. And, of course, you introduce elements like strategic zoom, which make them stand out, but only makes them stand out compared to other RTS games rather than... you play Stellaris, you can zoom all the way out and see the entire galaxy, or you can be in a system watching a space battle. So they do strategic zoom, but you don't see it in every RTS game. And
let's relook over some of the other really popular RTS games. Something like Warcraft 3, for example. Warcraft 3 brought a whole new unique aspect to the game and brought like a RPG element to it, where you have your hero, you gain experience, you level up, you get items, and then the campaign was built around that. It was like a very story-driven, very character-driven campaign. So it kind of merged the RTS with RPG elements in it, and then that was incredibly popular. And you see that again with most of the big hits, is that they did something new and innovative and merged RTS with some elements of something else. And I'd like to see more of that. I think there's tons of directions to go with that.
But Warcraft 3 Reforged didn't do very well, did it?
Well, I mean, that wasn't innovative, was it? I mean, they didn't do anything new. And that's what we see now, is all the remakes and the retold and so on. Because it's safe.
I suppose Age of Mythology Retold was one of the last games released. Was Age of Mythology Retold. Again, it's not a new game. It's just making an older game look a little bit more pretty.
Because remember, AAA studios, they are profit-driven shareholder companies that are looking for a return. So they like to play it safe. They don't want some risky, huge investments that might not do anything. It's not made by gamers for gamers anymore with these AAA games. And so that's why I'm not really looking at AAA to pave the way to something new and exciting.
For new and exciting, we need to be looking at the indie developers.
I think so.
People who are producing Tempest Rising, Sanctuary Shattered Sun, Dwarf. There's many exciting...
Falling Frontier.
Yeah, which I think is going to do Homeworld like Homeworld should have done Homeworld 3.
Yeah, and it's made by one guy. Like it looks absolutely incredible, and it's just like a one-man studio.
Do you think you've got a situation really where the technology has moved on so far that games don't have to be AAA funded for you to have a AAA experience?
Absolutely. I mean, especially if you compare it, something like Warcraft 2 was AAA at the time, right? And now if you came out with a game that looked like Warcraft 2, you would think like it's some like teenager that made this in like his spare time, right? But no, I mean, there's, in terms of graphics, it's easier than ever by a very large margin to make something that looks good. And then, where the trouble lies is with a lot of the mechanics. But again, people are building on top of what other people made. And so a lot of these refinements in mechanics, there were things that had to be discovered and now have been discovered. And now you can like have an easy base if you get inspiration from other games, and then you can add something to that. You can add your own spin to that, and it's easier than ever to do it.
I suppose you're right. I mean, if you look at, we mentioned Sanctuary Shattered Sun, which is based heavily on the Supreme Commander games, and also Beyond All Reason, based heavily on Total Annihilation. I mean, how did that come about? Was that somebody just thought that was it like supposed to be like a remake, a fan-made remake of TA? Is that what that was supposed to be?
So what it was in the beginning actually was a bunch of Swedish developers who made their own engine. It was called Spring RTS engine at the time. And what it was is that they brought the files of Total Annihilation and put it in their engine and just basically play Total Annihilation in their 3D engine. It was a fully 3D engine, which was quite different from the Total Annihilation engine. So they were messing around with this basically for fun. And that slowly over many, many years evolved into people coming in and remaking that game, remaking the models, completely changing the rules yet again, and making a new game that is now has turned into Beyond All Reason. So yeah, I mean, it was this progress, and it took huge amounts of original pieces of Total Annihilation and then made their own stuff with it. And I think that is a bit what's cool about it, is that it is people who came on with passion for this game, with passion for Total Annihilation, passion for making something new, and then everyone chipped in a little bit. And anytime someone had a cool idea, they can add to it. And that's something that you don't have with AAA games, is like this grassroots passion, and it's all very top down.
Yeah, you've got a situation where you have gamers making games for gamers rather than a company making money for its shareholders. And I'm not anti-capitalist. You know, some of the finest games are from huge studios, but what we're looking at with RTS games, I think that AAA studios have abandoned the RTS genre, and I think that Homeworld 3 was probably the final nail in the coffin of the involvement of these huge, well-funded studios being involved with our favourite kind of games. It's kind of sad, really. You know, can you think of any kind of situation where you think they would come back, where we would maybe get to see them again, or do you think it's gone? Do you think it's now indie only?
It will definitely come back. I'm not sure how successful it will be, who it will be that will make another big RTS, but sooner or later, someone will come around. It could be Blizzard, it could be someone else. Just imagine if there's nothing for the next few years, any RTS that comes out will automatically get a lot of attention simply because it will be an RTS and a lot of people are still RTS players. And if it's the only one that comes around, it will generate interest. And that means that investors would be interested in it. I'm just not super confident that they will do a good job at it. And probably it will be so that it will be indie developers that have to make something cool and innovative and new and fresh. and then after that is very successful, other AAA studios like, oh, look at that, they're successful. Oh, I guess we can also make something like that.
But I guess it's only going to be niche interest, because the other benefit of having a large studio with lots of financial backing is in their marketing, in their advertising. You go to these smaller indie studios where money is very, very tight. They don't have a lot of money to try. They don't have a lot of money to get the exposure which is necessary to introduce your game to a wider audience. It's going to be people who are actively looking for an RTS who find indie RTSs, because it's not going to go out there, is it? It's not going to be. You're not going to get a 3-minute advert during the Super Bowl for Beyond All Reason or Dorf or Stormgate. They just don't have the money for it.
But if your game is fun. You don't need any advertising. It advertises itself. And yeah, I think that's the biggest strength about indie games, is that they can make something super fun, super appealing. And then like Falling Frontier, nobody ever advertised for that. There's no, and yet we all know about it. So, and it's not even out yet. So, and it's not an IP that anyone has ever done anything with. It's something completely new. No advertisement. A one-man studio. Everyone knows about Falling Frontier. Why? Because it looks cool as hell.
I suppose you could draw comparisons to Manor Lords. I appreciate it's not a true, but then again, I suppose it does have RTS elements, doesn't it?
It is. It is RTS. I would call it an RTS.
Okay, all right. You seem very confident and very, very passionate about that. So it is an RTS, and it is. It was one of the most successful games on Steam. It's still in early access, but it was one of the most successful games on Steam last year, wasn't it?
So yeah, and it's quite innovative. Not incredibly innovative. I think there's other similar games out there, but it did feel kind of fresh, and yeah, it doesn't have huge backing. It's not like a huge studio or anything like that. It just, if something looks fun, people will tell their friends about it. They will stream it. They will play it. So, and I think if something like Manor Lords comes around and it's like something, it's another RTS, but it does things very differently than other RTSs, and it gets like a lot of success, then yeah, AAA studios will be like, oh, actually, we want a piece of that pie,
Yeah, again, it's another one-man team, and that's an interesting point you raised there. That do these larger studios see the success of Manor Lords and think, well, we can do that better because we have more resources? But this brings me to another point. Has the audience given up on AAA studios because of some negative experiences with the likes of Homeworld 3? Has the RTS audience said, you know what, I'm not interested in what Blizzard or Relic or any of these household names produce, because in the past they've been a bit shit, and I'm just going to lump all of my hopes in now with indie developers?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk for everyone, but I can talk for myself that I certainly wouldn't be buying one of these. Like, if you come around with, I don't know, Age of Empires 5 or Warcraft 4 or something like that, I would be extremely skeptical, and I would definitely not pre-order it. I would not buy it until I saw lots of reviews or gameplay videos and I felt confident about it. But that's maybe just me. I can't tell for everyone, but I certainly feel fatigued by it. And
I suppose Manor Lords does this thing where it harks back to what you said earlier on about introducing different mechanics, different elements, with the whole settlement management aspects of that game. That's not something which you would see in a traditional RTS, and that's really resonated with people. And maybe that is the way that they need to go. You mentioned about bringing in RPG elements. We bring in settlement management, and maybe this is what they have to do in order to make RTS games successful again.
Well, I would say that it's not super innovative. Like, for example, we had the series like Settlers. I don't know if you played that, but...
I did, yeah. A long time ago.
Well, Manor Lords is not incredibly different than Settlers in a way. It's just brought in a very nice, neat way with some added elements to it. And I think Settlers was really great game, and I think it was really cool how it was different than the other RTS games. And yeah, I think we need to see more of that. When I think of other such things, I think, yes, Settlers, what was great with that, and Manor Lords is that continuation. There's also something like Populous. I don't know if you played that.
I played Populous. Yeah, that was one of the first games I ever played. I think
Populous, the beginning.
And was Populous? Was it late 80s or early 90s?
Something like that. It's very old, but it had some really cool magic system. You could change and shape the world and have all sorts of ridiculous gameplay with that.
I had Populous on floppy disk. That's how old it was. I used to play it on an IBM 486. Wow. I think it was. So we're going back a long time now. But yeah, it was different. It wasn't what you would consider to be a traditional RTS, was it? It was a very different type of game. But it came at the time where everything was new. Everything in strategy was new and fresh, and they were leading the way on introducing all of these different types of games to the world.
And then there's like games like Black and White, also like very unique, very different. And I think we can see more of that. And I think that can work, and I think people can get excited for that. I mean, let's take something like Frostpunk and make it into an RTS game. There's tons of possibilities with it. I just don't want to see yet another, I build my base and I build some houses over here, and I go gather some wood, and then I build a barracks, and I build some pikemen or whatever, or some riflemen, and then I send it over to the other guy. Like, I don't know, we've played that game. We don't need that again.
And maybe that's the reason why things are no longer successful, because it is just a rehash. It's a regurgitation of previous titles. It's almost like we've seen it all before. I want you to wow me. I want you to give me something which is new, which is fresh, which is interesting, which I've never seen before, and you are failing to do that. So who's going to be the studio that introduces something fresh and interesting and exciting? Is it going to be our indie developers? Is it going to be games like Falling Frontier? Because there's too much risk for a AAA studio to pump millions into a development of a game which they can't be sure is going to be a success.
Yeah, I think so. And what I would love to see is some small indie studio making something really cool, get really big actually, and then become their own new AAA studio. And it would be really nice if we had something like, for example, the makers of Baldur's Gate 3, not at all RTS game or strategy game even, although maybe it's a little bit strategic. But what they are is they're a big AAA studio now, really huge. And they don't have shareholders. They're privately owned, so they can make risks. They can do something big like that without guaranteed return, or especially not short-term returns, because they're still privately owned. So I would like to see more of that, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's about having integrity, to say, no, this is the game we're working on. I mean, I was talking to Mike from the Sanctuary team, and they were offered a £1 million investment, and they turned it down.
Wow.
And that's huge sums of money for what is a very, very small indie studio with maybe 12 employees. For someone come along and say, I want to give you $1 million, and they said no. And is it a case of because they want to maintain control of the creative process, and there's fear that if you start introducing shareholders, you become beholden to them. They start placing demands upon what you're doing. They want to do things in a certain way. They become too involved. They start to interfere, and that's perhaps not the way that these people want to do. And it comes down to these being passion projects. And I think you look at the success of Manor Lords, it is a labour of love. It is a passion project. Falling Frontier could be exactly the same.
And if you look at like development of like first-person shooter games, it's so weird that it's called like an industry, like as if it's like a factory floor, and you have like these different teams. Like, okay, they're working on this title, they ship their parts, it moves on to the next cycle, and they're already moving on to the next title while that title is not fully finished. Like really like working on what's it called, like the moving band. And it's like that this is supposed to be a fun hobby, something that you do out of passion, and then like that's not something I want to be involved with, either on the developer side or on the player side. I want to see art, not industrial products.
Mm-hmm. But those industrial products are extremely successful.
Yeah, well, not so much with RTS, I guess.
And I guess it's a case of how do we fix that? I think there's a couple of things that we have to consider when we look at why RTS games are not as popular. And for me, the main one is the prevalence of consoles. If you look at a high-end gaming PC that you need to play one of the latest games, it costs 3 times what it costs to buy an Xbox or a PlayStation, and you need a desk, you need monitors, you need a mouse, keyboard, you need a particular space. You're not sat on your sofa with a controller, which is why console games are far more popular, far more mainstream now than what PC games are.
But it's
and
a trap.
RTS has always been a trap.
Yeah, well, because every game that you have to buy for the console, like they sell the console at a loss, like literally they do, and then every game that you buy, you have to shell out. How many double cheeseburgers is that? Like a couple too many, I think.
We'll have to ask Joe. Yeah, we'll have to ask Joe. I think it would be a food challenge number of double cheeseburgers, wouldn't it? For what, 80? Are they £80, €80 now, something like that, for a brand new title on your Xboxes and on your PlayStations?
And how many completely free games can you play on your PC? Like almost an unlimited amount of free games there are available nowadays.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. So there's one hope that I have for seeing a big budget RTS game, and that's with Warhammer 40k. I think as an IP it's huge and it's getting even bigger, and if you look at the Amazon Studios Games Workshop collaboration where they've got Henry Cavill coming in and they're going to be making Warhammer 40k TV shows. And they signed their deal to do this. They signed it at the end of 2024 after a 12-month negotiation period, and now they're going to be getting into producing these titles. That's going to hit the mainstream, and if you look at the Warhammer video games, they tend to be based upon the tabletop system. So a lot of it is turn-based, but their most successful game was, before Space Marine 2, of course, which was released last year, was Dawn of War, which is an RTS. So I have high hopes for Dawn of War 4 from a AAA studio. I think Relic did the first few, didn't they?
Is it not a little bit oversaturated at the moment? With the Warhammer Total War series, with Gothic Space Armada, with Dawn of War. Is there space for yet another one?
Well, Dawn of War 3 was a damp squib. It didn't do very well at all. And that was released some time ago now. So maybe things have settled and it's time for them to look at the next in the series, Dawn of War 4.
What would it look like for you? What would a good Dawn of War 4 have? Like, what does the game look like? And you want to buy it?
Imagine something like Empire at War. You know, the Star Wars game where you had space battles and land battles.
I was actually thinking about that earlier when we were talking about RTS going in a new direction.
So I think that if they introduced a multifaceted campaign, it has to be story driven. This is an IP which is all about the story. It's based purely on the story. It has to be a huge campaign which covers space battles. I mean, if you look at Falling Frontier, which is a space-based RTS, you look at the original Homeworld, you know, they already have, you say, Battlefleet Gothic Armada, which is an RTS. It's an RTS with spaceships, so they already have that existing. If they introduced a more modern version of that and then included ground battles as well, so you have to fly to a system, defeat the enemy in space before you can then go to the planet and take the planet. But in scope as well, you know, it can't just be about one system. It can't just be about one planet. It has to be huge in scope. It has to be galactic.
So would that not be a Total War game then?
No, because I class Total War games as turn-based.
Yeah, but like it sounds like if someone would make that game, it would be like Total War making that game, no? So,
well, I know there is talk of a Warhammer 40k Total War game, but I just don't see. And I think we talked about that in our Total War episode, which seems such a long time ago now.
But I would be down for that if they made it real time. But yeah, that's also something I mentioned during the Total War episode. But yeah, like have the fleets move in real time.
Yeah. Have the fleets move in real time, and to be able to seamlessly move between you're fighting a land battle, and as you're fighting that land battle, you get a notification that enemy reinforcements are entering the system, please. And then suddenly you've got to juggle the land battle, but also deal with the space battle as well, and being able to seamlessly move between the two.
Yes. Okay, I'm sold.
And you're sold. Okay. So who's making it? Because Relic made the original Dawn of Wars, and they screwed the pooch with Dawn of War 3. And
I wouldn't trust Relic.
I think
I wouldn't trust.
You wouldn't trust
I mean, if you look at what they've been making, like Age of Empires 4, like Age of Empires 4 as a franchise, as a game, had huge potential to be like an incredibly well-selling game, and I mean, look at what it is. It's just another rehash of nothing much, you know.
So the jury's out on which developer we'd like to make the game, but I think we should do an episode purely on that. I think it would be. We'll see who we can get to come and join us, but I think that would be a really good episode. What Dawn of War 4 would look like, and it wouldn't just be a remaster of Dawn of War 1. And this is perhaps where the issue is, because Dawn of War, the first game, was superb. It was just an incredible experience. Dawn of War 2, they tried too hard to be different, and they brought in far too many RPG mechanics. Dawn of War 3, they tried to roll that back, and they failed. So, yeah, we're not going to have Relic. But I
definitely think you can ask Hooded Horse to be the publisher. They've been like publishers for some really cool strategy games lately.
We just need a good developer for it. Okay, well, for our listeners then, answers on a postcard. Who do you think would be the best people to develop Dawn of War 4? Come and tell us. Because we don't know.
I'm curious about some of the answers here. I think I have some thoughts, but let's see what you guys at home are thinking of.
Yeah, okay. Which brings me to, just as an aside, Tim and I have been talking behind the scenes about expanding the Critical Moves team. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I know who I really want to develop this game and I want to come on a podcast and I want to talk about it, get in touch. We're looking to take on a couple additional hosts for the podcast, one based in the US or in the US time zone, so that could be Canada, US or South America, and one in the EU or the UK. If you're interested in coming in talking to us, if you think we're completely wrong with everything that we say and you want to tell us that, fantastic, because it's getting boring arguing with Nuno because we know he's always wrong about everything.
Yeah, come join us on our Discord, and the link should be below if you're on YouTube.
Yeah, and if not, if you go to criticalmovespodcast.com, all of the links are on that site for Discord, for all of our social medias, criticalmovespodcast.com. Well, Tim, I don't really have anything else to add to this. Any final thoughts on why AAA Studios abandoned RTS?
Yeah, because they can't make something nearly as good as Beyond All Reason.
Okay. So the future is Beyond All Reason, yeah?
It absolutely is.
That's until we get Dawn of War 4. Okay. Thanks very much for coming and having a chat with us. It's been appreciated, and I'll catch you probably next week, Tim.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun here. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.